which is far from where there are inhabitants, so it will be difficult to locate wind turbines here. So you have to find a location that is close to inhabitants. It's in Idore Hill, so you have to find, probably you go to Idore town, there are inhabitants here. So let's pick a location within where there are inhabitants. Let's try and search for these coordinates. So this is this coordinate where people are inhabiting, and it's also giving us similar. So you see here you have 5.9 meters per second. Wind turbines were going to be sited at a location. It was necessary to understand the wind speed. So we are talking of the average wind speed as well as the standard deviation of this wind speed. The wind assess the wind resources, and it was done through a wind vane as well as with the use of copper anemometers. But as time progressed, there are other instruments that were used. And in recent times, the most efficient now are the SODAR and the LIDAR, which are quite expensive. But prior to going to site for any activity, even assess the wind resources, it's good to always have an estimate of what is going to be met on site, which is where this Global Wind Atlas comes into play. For your desk studies, Global Wind Atlas is quite efficient because it gives you a bird's eye view as to the wind speed at different levels in different environments all around the world. So you can see here the wind atlas. Let's say they gave data for 100 meters above mean sea level. So you can always manipulate it in order to get data of the wind speed at other levels. For example, at 50, at 10 meters above mean sea level. So you can see here it has loaded. This is at 10 meters height above the ground. So if we zoom down to Nigeria, you can see that Nigeria is not really favorable for wind. However, there are some locations that have significant wind speeds. So this is Nigeria here. So we just wait for it to load all of the wind speed. Okay, it's loading now. You can see that there are patches of good wind. For example, this location in Lafia is showing about 4.6 meters per second. Although there are patches of good wind speed. So here is a concentration where you have good wind speeds in Plateau State. You can see here you have 7.7 meters per second. You don't necessarily have such good wind speeds. For example, in Jos itself, where you have inhabitants, the wind speed there is different. It's lower than the 7 meters per second that was obtained in the mountainous regions. So when we look at it closely, you can see that, let's say for this case in Jos, let's say this case in Jos is 3.4. Assuming we go to 100 meters at that same location, it becomes 5.5. And even if you say at 150 meters, because There are some locations that if you go higher, it's possible to get good wind speed. But in this case, regardless of how high you go, you realize that you may not still get sufficient wind speed to power the wind turbine. So on the left here, you can see the different layers. On the left, you can see mean wind speed, if that's what you want to see. Then mean power density, which is the power per meter squared on the ground, which also gives you an estimate of how much power can be harnessed per meter squared on the ground. So you see how low some of the values are in this heat map. So terrain layers, rough lines, bathymetry, orography, and the likes. So you can actually draw marker in some areas. So you can see this location in Idare having some sufficient wind speed. Probably these are highland locations. Okene has good wind speed as well. The town of Okene. In Kwara State has good wind speed. So this location has good wind speed. Around the Share area. Share area, Bodhisado, has 5 meters per second at 100 meters above the ground. But at 10 meters above the ground, it's much lower. You can see 3 meters per second within this location, which is just the starting wind speed. So at 10 meter height, the locations that are quite favorable in Nigeria is Idare in Ondo State, Idare in Ondo State, where you can have up to 7 or even 9 meters per second. You also have at A up to 8 meters per second. So when we come down to Lagos, at the coastline, it can only harness 4 meters per second. At 100 meters, it can harness 5 meters per second, so it's not viable. So it's primarily the mountainous regions. Let's see. At 100 meters in Idare, what does it say there? At 100 meters in Idare, it says 7 meters per second. This location looks favorable. In Idare area. So you see here 7.5 meters per second. At 100 meters, then at 150 meters. Doesn't change much. So these are locations you can now select and say let's do a further study to ascertain what is obtainable in the region. Now this is just the software that approximates. So with this you are able to then select it as a subject site for further studies. Another location that will be suitable for this is this region. Ikere. This region, Ikere, is also a suitable region where further studies need to be done. Ikere and Iju Itaogbolo are suitable locations, including Ado Ekiti, are regions where you can actually search and find out further information. This is 7.7 meters per second. So this is where you can actually cite a leader to do further verification assessments, and this is all at 10 meters height above mean sea level, which is quite favorable. So you can see I've drawn a polygon using this draw rectangle, draw polygon toggle, and draw the rectangle using the other toggle. Then for the marker, you're able to select a marker at every point that's of interest. So from this you can see that there is not much favorable wind speed in the Niger Delta. Most of the wind speed in that region is just startup wind speed, which is not sufficient to power the wind turbine systems. It's 10 meter height. But additional verification needs to be done in order to ascertain the suitability of these sites. So this is layout, so satellite, roadmap, labels, coastline, electricity grid. So let's see the roadmap. So before we're looking at the satellites. If you look at roadmaps, it also help us to know whether those regions selected within Akure and Idare actually have roads within them. So if we pick out this location, you can actually save it and get the coordinates. So this is basically some uses of this global wind atlas, which is good for assessing a geographical location to see how well it performs with respect to wind speed. And you know, the average wind speed doesn't really say much about the spread of the wind. It could be that the spread is within 4 meters per second and 13 meters per second. It could be different, so it depends also on the standard deviation as well. So those are data that need to be captured once one is on site. So additional study will now be done on these selected sites. So that's basically it. So here you can always go and toggle on and off any location of interest and see what pops up. So once you select it, you see here the coordinates Idare. So you can actually copy these coordinates. So when you search it on Google Maps, it will locate it for you. So 7.22 meters per second at 10 meter height. So the direction of the wind is mostly southwest. in Idoren, Ondo State. Aha. So you see that it's in a mountainous location. Which is far from where there are inhabitants, so it will be difficult to locate wind turbines here. So you have to find a location that is close to the inhabitants. It's in Idoren Hill, so you have to find, probably you go to Idoren town. There are inhabitants here. So let's pick a location within where there are inhabitants. Let's try and search for these coordinates. So this is this coordinate where people are inhabiting, and it's also giving us similar. So you see here you have 5.9 meters per second. So that's some ways you can actually walk through using Global Wind Atlas. So this is also a vicinity where people are living. You can see here there are roads, there are buildings, there are houses there as well, which is where we have selected. Let's select another one. So where you have inhabitants again, you have 5.8 meters per second. So it's viable within Idoren town of Ondo State in Nigeria. So this is how you use to estimate in all other locations. So thank you for watching this video. This is Catchment of Resources, where we create for better living.